everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My speaker today is Dr. Michelle Lupkin, who's going to be speaking with us about the concept of radical honesty. Dr. Lupkin, can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Sure. I am a psychologist based in New York, and I predominantly work with teens and adolescents and young adults, but I work with adults as well, and I specialize in patients with eating disorders, but also those with suicidality and self-harm.
Great, thank you. So tell us a little bit about what is radical honesty?
Right. So I think being radically honest means being genuine. And I think that's where another way of thinking about it is being radically genuine, of being true to yourself and true to other people around you.
Great, thank you. How do you employ radical honesty in dating, or are there times where you would encourage people not to use it?
Sure. I think it really depends on what stage of dating you're at. When you're meeting somebody for the first time, whether mostly online right now or in person in any way, that's where what I would use radical honesty is much more that self-reflective, being true to who you are and not trying to be someone you're not just to impress. That being said, that's not a time to be honest to the point of sharing things that may not be appropriate to share early on. For example, very personal things which later in a relationship might be appropriate and important for you to share and be honest about. When you're first meeting someone, that's not really the time where you want to be fully honest. That being said, my rule of thumb is to never ever lie, no matter what. And so in those early stages of a relationship, you can be honest and withhold information and find a way to not lie about it. Because when you lie about it, it always seems to bite you later on. If you're thinking about a relationship that's more serious, you've been together for a while, that's where it is important to be open and honest with your partner about both how you feel, anything in your history that you think is important, but even more important, how things the other person does might make you feel. Because we often assume that the other person knows what we're thinking, and part of being radically honest is not mind reading and really having that script. The way I describe it to patients often is thinking about a sports telecast on the radio. When you're listening to a sports telecast on the radio, they're giving you the play-by-play so you can picture it. And when you're in a relationship, we often forget that that's an important skill to use as well. What's going through your head, you want to be very open and descriptive with your partner, because otherwise you're going to assume one thing, they're going to assume something, and you're likely to have a lot of miscommunication. So a healthy relationship really is based on that ability to be radically honest.
Yeah. So along those lines, what are some red flags when you have a sense that someone else is being dishonest? What are some things to look for, either if you have a hunch or if you're just scared because maybe you've had a previous partner who was really dishonest with you, and so that's a fear of yours. What are some things that you can look for?
Sure, no, and it makes sense, especially if you have had somebody be dishonest with you in the past, both whether they said something or done something, especially cheated on you when that wasn't clear that that was, that you thought you were in a more monogamous relationship, you can feel really burned. So some of the things I say to often look for is first think about how do you feel, right? Think about it. I know me, I'm a visceral person. If my stomach is kind of in knots and there's something there, that to me is a red flag. So it's knowing yourself and how do you feel? Do you feel fully comfortable talking with this person, being in the room with this person, and listening to those signs within yourself? Because often we ignore those signs and then we perpetuate a relationship, even though somewhere in there we know this isn't right.
Yes.
The other is being radically open and honest. It's okay if you've been burned to say, hey, look, I've been burned in the past, and it's really important for me for us to be open and honest about things. So if you think the person is evading, or there's certain topics when you talk about it that they're kind of skewed and moving along and not giving you a straight answer, those are some other warning signs.
Being honest about being honest.
Absolutely. And I think those are the things where often people are afraid to have those conversations, but it actually can be liberating to be able to share exactly what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and put it on yourself rather than saying, you know, you did this to me, be able to say, when you said that, here's how I was thinking about it, and here's the thoughts that went through my head. So that way you can differentiate, your own anxiety or fears about it versus what might actually be happening. But at the end, sometimes you have to really go on that gut instinct of, does this relationship feel safe or doesn't it?
Great. Thank you so much. Do you have any final tips for us about radical honesty and how people can employ it, when they're dating, or other ways that they might be able to use it?
Sure. I think the most important thing is really being honest with yourself. So many of us try to be somebody we think the other person will like, but
Mhm.
ultimately, once you're in that relationship, and if that relationship is successful, you need to be who you are. And you might have to make some changes that you together as a couple are going to make, but you need to be true to who you are. And I think that's where it really starts. If you're not able to own what's important to you, what are your values, what are you looking for, then it's going to be a hard place to go. It also means being open with something that might be different, and keeping that dialogue going. And I think that's the biggest piece of advice, is to keep the dialogue going rather than having it stuck in your head where it's going to tend to be, escalate. To be able to say what you're thinking, and have that conversation early on. I would make sure to be honest with yourself and be careful about how much you're sharing. You don't want to share too much too quickly, and you can avoid or evade those conversations, and to not lie.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about, in working on this and creating this site, is that um, a lot of people are dishonest even in their profile, right? They'll say
Mhm.
I'm, 5'10" when they're 5'7", right?
Right.
The guys do stuff like that, or they might show a picture of themselves where they're 40 pounds thinner, right? And
Mhm.
it's like, the person's going to show up to the date and see that, right? And so, even employing it, even though it might be hard from the beginning, it feels really important.
Right. And I think it goes back to being truthful of who you are and wanting people to see you for who you are. Now, does that mean you don't want to put your best foot forward and, put on an outfit that's flattering and, put yourself together in a way that's going to make you appear confident and flattering at the same time? Absolutely, you want to do that. And you want it to be authentic,
Yeah.
right? That genuineness and authenticity. Because ultimately, if you then meet that person or they meet you and the profile that you described online is different than what they're actually seeing, that may be a red flag for that person even at the beginning. And so the relationship may not even take off from there.
Yes. Yes. Good point. So thank you so much for talking with us today about radical honesty. Where can people who are interested in finding more about you and the work that you do locate you?
Sure. The best way to locate me is to drop me an email, and my email address is michelle@drmichellepkin.com.
Great. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you.